And we're going to give it just a minute to let other folks join, and then we'll get started. You can see our attendees numbers are continuing to roll in and go up, which is exciting. I think this has actually been our most popular webinar topic of this series. This is actually the final one in our series, but it seems to have garnered the most interest.
Oh, that's exciting. This is an amazing topic.
It definitely is. All right, well, I know that people will continue to trickle in, but I wanted to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. I'm really excited that you could join us today. I'm Kelly Haran, and I'm a member of our community team here at Guidepost. And I also happen to be a former Montessori teacher as well as a Montessori child. I wanted to go over just a few housekeeping items first before we get into the good stuff with Lisa Kathleen. So first, we're going to be recording this webinar. Just wanted you to be aware of that, and it will be made available after our series runs. It will actually be on our elementary family, sorry, not our elementary, our early childhood family framework platform, which Lisa will be talking more about, and we'll also be sending you information about after the webinar is over. So I wanted to orient you to the panel. There's a section there that's called questions. And so if you have a question as Lisa's talking, and we hope that you have lots of questions, you're going to want to write them in that tab on the panel, and then I'm going to relay them to Lisa during our question and answer portion. So please do ask us questions. We'll leave time for that at the end. And let's go ahead actually and test that out. So if you can find that, and if you let us know where you're joining us from, that's always fun to see all the far-flung places that people are signing in from. So I've got Charlotte, North Carolina, McKinney, Texas, Toronto, Highland Park, New Jersey, Rockaway, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Montclair, Virginia. Got another Atlanta, where I'm from. Herndon, Virginia, got Beaverton, Oregon, Switzerland. All right, great. It looks like people have been able to find that, so fantastic. Well, I'm really excited today to introduce Lisa Kathleen, who's going to be sharing her wisdom. Some of you may have joined us a couple of weeks ago during the 3 to 6 webinar, so we're really excited to have her back today. Lisa is an AMI trained Montessori elementary guide, a parenting coach, and a parent educator with over 20 years of experience working with hundreds of families. And she's also a Montessori mom, which I'm hoping she'll talk a little bit more about in just a moment. Within our organization at Higher Ground and Guidepost, she's a member of our Prepared Montessorian training team. And she's passionate about Montessori, as you'll find out, and just as passionate about parenting. So I know I really enjoyed collaborating with her on these last couple of webinars, and we've got a couple more actually coming up in the future. And I'm excited for you to learn more from her today, and for me to learn as well. So I'm confident that you're going to be glad that you've joined us, and I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Good morning, everybody. Really excited to be here. This is actually one of my favorite topics. So when I was parenting coaching, this is a topic that obviously came up a lot. And it's a topic where you can see big change in an with some easy tips and just by doing some things differently. So I'm going to introduce myself very briefly. I'm Lisa Kathleen. Here is me and my daughter. I'm part of the Prepared Montessorian teacher training team here at Guidepost, and the parent of who is now a 14-year-old. So this is her in the picture when she was about 4. And I'm a trained Montessori guide, as Kelly mentioned. And I've also run my own business as a parenting coach and parent educator. And I've also worked extensively in classrooms with toddlers and 3 to 6-year-olds. I'm a big parenting and education nerd. I actually read my very first book about Montessori education when I was 15, and I read my first book about parenting in the same year because I thought that I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, and I thought that the skills you needed for parenting and the skills you needed for teaching were similar. So I started reading a lot of books that year. And when I originally heard, maybe about 6 years ago, about the Guidepost mission and the work that this organization does and the team that actually formulated this organization, I picked up and moved from Canada down to California so that I could be a part of it. So my daughter and I moved down here. The topic of our webinar today is meltdowns and tantrums and whining and supporting your children through those big feelings. And this is a pretty timely topic. Our children have so many big feelings right now, especially given that most of them have experienced recent sudden transitions in their daily routine, in their caregivers, or in the stress level of their parents. And that parents right now are generally stressed and generally worried. So I'm going to start out on the topic of tantrums and meltdowns, but stay tuned at the very end of the webinar because I'm also going to tell you why I love whining. This is one of the first big concepts that I want to really share with you in this slideshow. If we can get past that feeling that we're doing something wrong, that we're not doing our job as parents, that the child's tantrum somehow means that we're failing, then addressing the meltdown itself is a lot easier. So I'm here to tell you that you are not wrecking your child, that this difficult situation that we're in right now is not going to wreck your child. We can help our children be stronger and more resilient when we effectively support them through difficult times. And research shows that children who live through some sort of challenge and are effectively supported through it are in fact the opposite of wrecked. Those children become resilient. So that's my goal here today, is really talk to you about what it is that helps children to be successful and to thrive through difficult times. When they are resilient, they're more able to handle challenges, setbacks, and difficult times throughout their lifetimes. And as we all know, every one of us is going to experience challenges in life. So now is as good a time as any to show your child how to handle it when their time comes. So yeah, this is actually your opportunity to shine as parents. And here's the really good news. You can shine even though you are too busy, stressed out, overwhelmed, and melting down yourself some days. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep doing the best that you can. So your job is not to give your child the perfect life. It's not to solve every problem with a lollipop. And it's not to make them stop crying. So what is your job? Your job is to prepare them for those ups and downs in life by showing them how to manage their big feelings and by supporting them through those big feelings. So how do we do that? They got to go through the feelings. They got to go through that dark tunnel to come out the other side. And that's the key word. The child has to know how to navigate through the emotion, because when children discover that they can handle disappointment, be comforted, and survive, that's when they become resilient. So each time this happens, each time they make it through a big emotion and come out the other side realizing that they're okay, the next disappointment becomes a little easier. So you're really working with your child, training for the long haul here. And contrast this with what happens for the child when the emotion is disrupted by, say, a lollipop or an iPad. The child doesn't learn to go through the emotion. He learns to go around it, to avoid it, and then the opportunity to build resilience is lost. So those big feelings and the tears that come at the end of a meltdown are adaptive. They help the child adapt to the difficult situation. And you know your child has come through the angry feelings, the tantrumy feelings, when you see those sad tears. They typically signal the end of the meltdown. So I want to say right off the top here that if you're working from home and sometimes a lollipop or an iPad is the only tool you've got, don't beat yourself up. That's okay. Your child will have lots of opportunities to build resilience when you aren't on a client call or in the middle of a webinar. But the goal is that over time, your child will learn that he can be disappointed 1 minute, have those big feelings, and then come out the other side happy and okay. So let's talk about what that looks like. The first principle is to legitimize the feelings. Now, depending on the age of your child, this is going to look more or less complex in how you speak to your child. But this is the first principle. It's very common in our culture to know that you should name a child's feeling. And that's helpful, but it's just the beginning. This kind of feelings chart, or even just naming the feeling when the child is experiencing it, is one way to legitimize a feeling. It helps the child know that there's a name for what's happening to them, that it's normal, and that it happens to other people too. But the next step is to help the child understand more about what's happening and where the feeling came from in simple language that your child understands. So in the case of the child in the car who's been stuck at home for a month, who's dealing with his parents trying to work from home and his younger sibling trying to steal all his toys, it might sound like this. I hear you. You have not been to school in such a long time. We didn't even go to the park today. You don't want to have a nap. And I ate your sandwich when you wanted me to hold it. This is the worst. You do not like this situation at all, and you're mad and sad. Now, at some point, you might say, I'm so sorry I ate your sandwich, and you're still mad and sad. But all of the apologies in the world are not going to change your child's mad and sad. So that's what we need to address, not focusing on the apology or I'm sorry or people make mistakes at this moment. So don't just use your words. You want to use your feelings and your tone and your whole voice to reflect your child's big feelings so that they know that when they hear you speaking, they know that you actually understand what's going on for them, that you get them. So another piece of this is that this scenario ends up being for the child the story of how they built resilience. They experienced disappointment and survived. And so that night at bedtime, or the next day, or years down the road, your child might really love hearing you tell the story of when I ate Ben's sandwich. That's the story of how your child develops resilience. So in our current situations, there are a lot of layers to the big feelings. When you can put the small disappointment in the context of the big stressor, then you help your child to work through not just the emotion of the moment, but also some of the emotions associated with the bigger picture. So sometimes when you do this, you're going to get even bigger emotions. And that's your goal. You want to get it all out so that the child can go through it and come out the other side. All right. And this is a sub-principle. Don't try to talk your child out of those feelings. Instead, you're helping them come to terms with the feelings. And I love to use, excuse me, I love to use this analogy. How would you like it if you were out for coffee with a friend and you were really upset and your friend said, "It's just a car. It's okay. You're fine. People wreck cars all the time." Or, "Well, yeah, but you ran a red light. Of course you had an accident." You'd probably much rather that your friend say, "Oh no, that's the worst. You just got that car. That must be a huge disappointment. And you're dealing with termites too. What a drag." We want people to understand what we're going through and to reflect it back to us, because that shows us that they understand. And this is what you're doing for your child in the moment. They don't care why it's happening, why the big feelings are happening. They don't care why they can't swim in the ocean or eat the bath bomb or get their sandwich back. And they don't even care why you ate the sandwich in the first place in that moment. They just know that they feel awful. And if you're telling them that they feel fine, or telling them that they are fine, or if you're trying to over-explain why it has to be the way it is, they just feel worse. So you use as few words as possible. You may want to repeat occasionally some of the language again and reflect to them, but in general, you want to minimize, express, reflect, and then slow it down a bit and let the child feel the feeling. And that's step one. Legitimize it and don't try to talk your child out of it. Give them the context so that they can begin to understand where feelings come from and that big feelings are normal and healthy. All right, here's the second step. Model how to handle those big feelings. And this isn't typically something you're going to do in the moment that your child is melting down, because remember, ideally, only one person is having a meltdown at a time. But it's something that you can do regularly so that when your child is having big feelings, she knows what to do. So especially now, most of us are having big feelings sometimes. And so here's what it sounds like to model healthy emotional expression for a young child. "I am stressed today. I feel like running around the house and yelling. I spilled my breakfast and I have to do 42 things on the computer today, and I can't find my charger, and I miss grandma, and I really, really, really want to go to yoga. I haven't been to yoga in a month. I think I'm going to run around the house and yell until I feel better. I want to go to yoga." So whether you personally feel like jumping up and down or having a little cry or hitting a pillow or taking deep breaths or counting to 10 or whatever it is that helped you feel a little better, I really encourage you to be real about this. Your child needs to do something physical to get through the feelings. It can be a sound, it can be a movement. So figure out the physical thing that helps you feel better and do it. And you can offer your child other possibilities too. But think about the difference here. If you just start off running around the house and yelling or bursting into tears, and that's not something you normally do, your child will be scared. But if you talk them through what's happening, kind of narrating your own experience and your own process, your child starts to see instead a healthy way to handle their own emotions. So just for fun, I asked my 14-year-old yesterday to describe what I do when I'm having big feelings. And she started with swearing. She had a whole list. She said, "Mom, you swear." And she said, "Fake crying. I like to go, ah." And she said, "You do this frustrated growling thing while screaming, and then the monster hands." And she said, "Or you say, okay, okay." So she did some really good impressions. We both had a really good laugh about that. And the point is that it doesn't matter what you do what makes you feel better in the moment to help you get through the feelings, and share them with your child in a context so they can see what the process looks like to go through that feeling and come out the other side. So let's jump back to the children in the back seat of the car. The feelings are allowed. Now you're comfortable with them, you're even inviting them, and you've been actively modeling healthy ways of expressing those feelings. So now when you're in the sandwich situation, you can say, I ate your sandwich and you did not want me to. You're really upset and you have big screams. I'm going to open your window so you can get all your mad and sad out. And in a little while, we'll address how this looks if the screams are too loud. The third principle is to share life lessons. These are the things that your child will repeat to themselves when they're 22 or 35 or 50, and they're experiencing a heartbreak or a letdown or the equivalent of the pandemic of their generation. These are the words that, again, help your child to name what's happening. They give your child something to ground to, something to hold on to know that it's normal, that it happens to other people, and to know what to do about it. So here are some examples. Sometimes we just have to do hard things. People take care of each other in hard times. Crying can help you feel better, so can laughing. Sometimes people just make mistakes, then we're upset for a while, then we forgive them. Or all big feelings are welcome here. So these life lessons that you share with your child last for a lifetime. So make sure that you choose ideas that you feel really strongly about. Choose messages and truths that you really want your child to learn from you. They can relate, these truths can relate to the general situation, to the specific idea of developing resilience, or to the feelings in the moment. Your child might not be ready to hear them in the moment, so you may have to save these till afterwards when your child is ready to hear them, maybe as part of your story of the day you ate Ben's sandwich. I actually love this little one. When my girl was about 6, we had family friends over, and the younger daughter was comforting my daughter. My daughter got upset about something, and the daughter put her arm around my daughter and said, "You can't always get what you want." So that was one of their life lessons in her family. They were very musical and had this lovely way of addressing some of those situations to relieve the, just kind of take the stress away. And here's principle 4, set limits kindly. Now, this is a particularly important principle for the youngest children. You may need to, and I always think of the example of taking your child out of the middle of the road. So your child is in the middle of the road. You will not stop. You will not pause for a moment. You're going to remove your child from the middle of the road. There's no question. There's no guilt. When you're setting limits with your child, set limits in the same way. There's no question that you're going to set this limit. There's no guilt around it. It's just as if you were taking them out of the middle of the road and the car was coming. You just do it. You don't have to negotiate in yourself. Should I set this limit now or not? Whether you set it or not is less important than how you set the limit. You set it consistently and you set the limit kindly. So let's see what this looks like back in the car. So the child in this case did start screaming. And the question was how to handle it. So our heroine noticed that the sibling was actually hitting at his ears to make it stop. It was really loud. So she pulled over, but she didn't feel good about it. So let's talk about what it would look like to pull over and to set a limit kindly in that situation. You are really upset and you have big screams, and those big screams are hurting my ears and Giovanni's ears. I'm going to pull over, and Giovanni and I are going to get out, and we're going to stand nearby so that you can get all of your screams out. If you want us to get back in the car, all you have to do is switch to crying instead of screaming to help our ears. Or she might have said something like, I'm going to open this window part way so you can get your screams out and it's not so loud for Giovanni and I. Let me know when you're done the screams and I will close it again. When you're at home, you can either offer your child a choice. Do you want to get all your screams out in the bathroom or the bedroom or in this room? Or you can look at the situation and decide what the best solution is, given the scenario. You can go and get all your screams out in the bedroom. Screams in the kitchen hurt my ears too much. Come to me when you're done the big screams if you'd like a hug. You may also want to stay as close as you can with the child and just sit with them and let them have their big feelings until they come through those big feelings. If they're doing something that is hurting, so for example, hurting your ears, hurting a sibling's ears, hitting, those kinds of behaviors, it's perfectly fine just to give your child as much distance as necessary and sit by them and just say, I'm going to be here when you're ready and you can come and give me a hug or get a hug from me anytime. The key here is you are not punishing your child and you're not capitulating. Your child will know if there's even a hint of punishment in the conversation that you're having with them. So make sure that your focus is solving the problem, not making your child wrong when you're setting the limits. So you're helping set up the situation for them to express those big feelings in a healthy way. Again, you might want to teach deep breathing, jumping up and down, any of the other things that we talked about earlier on so that your child has some different options. Limit setting helps your child to learn that the feelings are welcome and legitimate, but that not all expressions of those feelings are acceptable. So let's see. So those are the 4 big principles. Legitimize the feeling, model how to respond to big feelings, share life lessons, and set limits kindly. All of the things that we've covered so far are applicable to children of all ages and in slightly different ways, but I want to talk briefly about some additional aspects of each age range. And I'm going to talk about the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s specifically. So age 2 is the age of the big no. And I want to do it myself. So 2-year-olds are discovering that they're separate from you. And to practice being separate and thinking independently, they need to get your ideas and your suggestions for their activities out of their heads so that they can decide on their own what they want to do in that moment. You can respond by saying, those are really big no's. It will be time to leave in 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when 5 minutes are up. And this is a situation with the 2-year-old or the 1-year-old that at some point it's perfectly acceptable to set the limit and say it is time to go and to pick them up and take them out. Now, you ideally, if you're using a physical solution, especially with the youngest children or at any time, you'll want to be facing the child. So you'll say to them, I'm going to pick you up now and we're going to go because it's time to go. Again, it's not a punishment. There's nothing wrong with them for needing you to support them in that moment to do the thing that has to be done. So this age of 2 is also a great age to offer 2 choices. Would you like this or that? Do you want to wear your red coat or your yellow coat? At this age, and only once the emotion shifts, and you can listen for it, when the emotion shifts from to wah, 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 you can also offer your child something interesting to decide, or some interesting decision to make, or some interesting language to consider while you help them put on their jacket, for example. So look, our kitty's tail is flicking back and forth. Look, flip, flick, flick. interesting language or an interesting decision to make is something that can engage the 2-year-old once they've come through the biggest part of the big emotion. Now, when I was parenting coaching full time, I got the most calls for parents of 3.5-year-olds. So 3.5-year-olds have really big feelings and big scary thoughts because they have big understandings. When my daughter was 3.5, I was with her at bedtime one night, and just as she was drifting off to sleep, she whispered to me, "Mommy, people die." She was terribly upset once when we saw a poster for a lost cat, because cats can get lost and never found. So at this age, big fears, big understandings are happening. So it's understandable that those come out in big emotions. And for many parents, the next level feelings of the 3.5-year-old are a big surprise. All of the things that we talked about today are key pieces of working with a 3.5-year-old when you're going through those big feelings. 3.5-year-olds can no longer be distracted. If you give them 2 choices, they will demand a third. So 3.5-year-olds do exceptionally well with collaborative problem solving. They love brainstorming solutions, and they often have better ones than you can think of. 4-year-olds. 4-year-olds are at peak whining age. And here's why I love whining. Whining happens when the child is having the feelings, but isn't having a meltdown. Your child is so smart that they've recognized and can imitate the tone of those big feelings, but they're able to keep their big feelings in check. For whining, teach your child exactly what to say instead and the tone they need to say it in. So it might sound like this: "I can't help you when you're whining because it hurts my ears too much." You can say, "Daddy, darling, can I please have a cookie?" Then I will think about it. At this age, role plays, and actually 2s and 3s as well, do very well with role plays around whining or asking nicely. So you can role play with an older sibling or with your spouse, showing how it doesn't work when somebody wants something and is whining. Just respond by saying, "No, my ears hurt too much to give you a cookie." And how it might work when they aren't whining. Maybe I will give you a cookie. It's a little bit close to dinner time, but my ears don't hurt, so I'm in a cookie giving mood. How about we each have a cookie after dinner? I'll set them aside now. And role play regularly, showing that it's a hard no when whining is involved and a maybe otherwise. One more tip for whining is to practice saying, "I'm not going to change my mind about this," and then stick to it. Once my daughter burst into tears of frustration and said, "I really wanted to go to that birthday party and I'm mad at you and you're not even going to change your mind about this." So when your child knows that you aren't going to change your mind, they can get through the whining to the sadness and those adaptive tears more quickly. So here's my girl again. A key aspect, and this is the last thing I'm going to address, a key aspect of addressing children's big feelings was not addressed in this webinar, and that is how to set up your child's day so that they have a strong routine and engaging activities that meet their developmental needs so that you can minimize the times that they're tired, hungry, overwhelmed, or feeling frustrated and out of control. So the family framework is where you address all of those aspects of proactively setting up your child's day in great detail. So again, if you haven't checked that out yet, please do. We'd love to see you there. And it's time to take some questions. Kelly, what do you have?
Yeah, thank you for all of your fantastic tips. That's phenomenal as usual. I do have quite a few questions. I know we probably won't have time for all of them, but there was a question actually from one of our guides at Foothill Ranch asking if you could talk a little bit about the under 2s briefly. You went over, I think, 3, 4, or maybe was it 2, 3, and 4, the big feelings?
Yes. So the big feelings for under 2, let's say that your little under 2-year-old is having those big feelings. So let's think about this, the principle. The first is to legitimize the emotion. You're not trying to stop it. So they're still going to need to go through the emotion. So you might be there and you're holding your little one, or if they don't want to be held, you're sitting nearby and you're there with them and you're saying, you are upset, you did not like that one bit. And so you're still reflecting their emotion and you're still using your voice to do that. So the second principle is to model. It's a little bit less valuable at this age, but still you can say, I did not like that. I did not like that, mommy. So you're still modeling for them. You're giving them something else to do. With the sharing life lessons, this might be something you start here. It's going to have less of an immediate effect on the child and more of a long-term goal. And the last piece is setting limits kindly. With the youngest children, you want to set the limits kindly and then hold them as they go through all of the big feelings there. And again, prevention, prevention, prevention. So I hope that's helpful. Are there any other specific questions about 1-year-olds? Because I want to make sure that I address anything specific around the littlest ones, because as you mentioned, I didn't address it specifically in the webinar.
Sure. There is a follow-up question from Pamela. She asked, I don't know how to address the big feelings when she doesn't speak yet, or when I don't know why she's having a tantrum.
Mm-hmm. And so again, here's the thing. You cannot always fix it, but you can always be there for your child. So as long as your mindset is not, I need to fix this, then you're fine. You be there with your child. Sometimes you can fix it and sometimes you should fix it, for sure. But in many cases, children just have feelings and they need to just get through them. So if you can help them through the feeling by being there with them, holding them, legitimizing the feeling, reflecting it back to them to let them know that you hear them and that they're understood, that's going to go a long way towards helping them go through the feeling and going through that cycle of feelings more quickly the next time. Because everything that we do along this path supports them in learning how to go through the feeling more effectively the subsequent time the feeling happens.
That's great. Thank you.
That's my pleasure.
Here's a question from Lindsay Brower. She says, I have a 4-year-old girl who throws herself down, cries, and screams 15 times a day.
Oh my God.
Have a conversation about the big feelings and how we can handle going forward today, or just wait for the meltdown to handle it with these tools?
Both. You should do both. So yes, definitely. So 4-year-olds, remember I said that 3.5-year-olds are great at collaborative problem solving. So with your 4-year-old, and I actually want to reach over, we still have a book. I'm not sure if it's here. We were using it yesterday with my 14-year-old. We still have a book that we wrote down all our situations in that we needed a collaborative solution to. We brainstormed possible solutions together, and then we chose the solutions that worked for both of us. Around here somewhere, maybe I'll put it in the family framework. I'll take a picture of it and I'll describe it a little bit. But our first note in there, my daughter was 4, and you can definitely start younger. We have some that we had done earlier ones, but we got the book at age 4. So sit down with her and say, let's say you're really upset. You've been getting really upset quite a lot lately. Let's think about things you can do when you're feeling really upset. And then write a list of things that are acceptable to you and acceptable to her, things that she might like to do. Write them all down and then decide together what is acceptable in your home and what is not. So for example, slamming doors might not be okay. So if she has been slamming doors, you write that down and as one of the things on the list, and then you talk about it ahead of time. So this is not okay, but here's what is okay. You can lie down on the floor and roll around as much as you want. I'm fine with that. What do you want me to do in that moment? That's another thing you can brainstorm together. And then you'll know what she wants from you in that moment. Does that help?
I think so. It helped me. Here's another sort of limit setting question, I think from Leslie Ann. She says, with the examples of letting screams out, does that encourage screaming for every meltdown? I wouldn't like my son to scream when we are out in public.
Exactly. Okay, this is where the limit setting comes in. So even practicing in the home, right? This when you're practicing in the home, so I'm going to actually use screaming as an example here. In my home, when my daughter was 4, we lived in a 4-plex. And so screaming was not an option. I was actually the landlord. So I had tenants in other units. We could not be screaming. It was just not an option. So when my daughter was screaming, I lived in Canada. One night it was 20 below and she decided she needed to scream. And I said, honey, you cannot scream in our house, but I want you to get all your screams out. So let's put on a snowsuit. I put on a snowsuit as quickly as I could. I tossed her in the sled and I took her out for a walk. And again, this was not a punishment. This was simply me saying, this is not an option. We can't do it this way, but here are your options. So in that situation, you're going to take your child to where it is acceptable for them to scream, and you're going to allow them to scream as much as they want in that situation. And for my daughter, that was it. She never again screamed in the house. When she had big feelings, she had lots of other options, other things that she could do instead. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, here's another follow-up to that, actually. Following up with what I asked, I'm okay with my son going through the feelings. I think that's good, actually, but I don't like when he's intentionally screaming or hitting. He even laughs about it. So I'm trying to set that limit that it's not okay to screech or hit, of course.
Exactly. And this is, again, very similar. So this is not acceptable. Here's an acceptable use of this. Here's an acceptable expression of this behavior. And some of these behaviors are tricky. You know, you want to protect yourself from hitting, for example. So maybe you hold your child at a distance. Your arms are longer than their arms, right? Or maybe you turn them around and hold them so that they're kicking and hitting away from you if they are trying to be close to you. Or maybe you say, please go in your room, and when you're done feeling like hitting, come out. Every child's personality is going to be different. If you need to, you know, if your child is physically attacking you and hitting you, you're going to need to restrain them gently and lovingly in some way and just hold them until they're done with that behavior. I hope that's helpful.
Yes. I have a couple of questions actually about the toilet learning reference that you mentioned at the beginning. How can people find that?
So the best way, actually go right on the website, go right into the family framework and type in toilet, and it should come up toilet learning or something along those lines. The search is really pretty good in that system, but I'm also going to ask Kelly, if you don't mind, to put a link to the toilet learning resource directly in the email that you send to follow up from this call.
Yep, I can definitely do that. I will do that right after we're done here, actually. Well, I am mindful of time. I do appreciate everyone's patience with our little technical glitch there. So thanks for hanging with us as we were able to sort that out. And just as a reminder, if you're not yet a member of our family framework, you can go to elearning.guidepostathome.com. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you'll see some of our offerings, and all of our free resources are available under free early childhood family framework. So please go check that out. And if we weren't able to get to your question today, apologies, but we can follow up there. So thank you so much, Lisa, and to everyone who joined us today. I think that's all for now.
It was a pleasure to spend this time with you this morning. Kelly.
All right, thanks. Bye.